I guess it would be fair to start out with a little bit of back history. This is my Mechman 350. This alternator and I have seen some miles. This alternator was on my 99 Chevy Tahoe from 2014 up until about a month ago. I bought this alternator used. It came to me used, and I got it at a screaming deal. Now, you're going to look at that and go, that's not a 350. It doesn't have the black case on it. Well, okay, so I bought this before they went to the fancy case. Well, this thing was produced before they went to the fancy dancy case. And this thing powered everything I ever needed it to power. My little stereo that I had in that truck, the 8 transistor amplifier I had in a little truck, 200 amps worth of load. The 12 pill I put in there at one point, about 300 and some amp load. It did me fine. It did me just fine. The only problem I had is after 5 years of owning it, and the previous owner having it and running it for a long time, I needed to replace the brushes. So we did a YouTube video on that. Link will be in the description below on how to change your brushes on a Mechman alternator. Well, right after I got this alternator and got it installed, I had the opportunity to buy this. This is their Elite series, the 375. There's probably about 25 to 30 amps of performance, but they went to the all billeted case, and it's really pretty. Well, it came time for me to be done with the Tahoe, and I decided I wanted to upgrade to the Suburban. So I went and I got myself newer Suburban, and I thought, man, I'm just going to slap this brand new 370 I got sitting in here, and that'll be great. But I don't know about you. I'm greedy. And when I mean I'm greedy, I'm saying I want more. And there isn't a red-blooded American amongst you all that doesn't want more. You know, if you can have $100, why can't I have 2? If I can have $1,000, why can't I have 2? If I can have 370 amp, why can't I have 5? Moreover, why can't I have 1,000? So that's when I did this. I got on the inner boob and I started looking around. So I get on the inner boob. And I type in Mechman. And this is what I get. And I'm like, oh, okay. Let's go to Chevy Tahoe. Or Chevy. And so we're going to go down and we're going to look. Suburban. Oh, Suburban. What do we got? All gas engines. And we're going to pick this one. And I start looking, and I'm like, 370, 370, 370. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? This is Steve Mead creation right here. Put a little touch on it. He says, man, well, why can't we go back and polish up the cases a little bit and make it a little bit more showy? But I started screwing around and looking on their webpage. And I'm like, well, let's go look and see what they got for brackets. And then I went, oh, what is this beautifulness? Now, jumping back in time just a couple years, this wasn't even offered. This wasn't even an option. They had little tiny pieces of channel metal and stuff. I'm like, here, you want to figure out how to do dual brackets? The first dual bracket I saw was on my business partner's truck that we installed. And we left the stock alternator in there and just added a 370. And then I went, whoa. What? Tell me more. And then I went, and I got myself very excited. I was like, dual 370s or a dual 400 or 370 and 400. Oh, we get more. So I did this. And then I went, wait a minute. And I thought, man, you know what? I'm going to call these guys. And I'm going to talk to them about what I can actually get done. So after quite a few phone calls, I learned a little bit. I can't tell you, those guys at Mechman are super smart, very helpful, very educational, and made me think about some things that I wasn't thinking about. Like I wanted to get dual 500 amp alternators. And they said, well, we can send them to you if you want, but you're gonna have problems. And they went on to explain to me that because I'm running a standard 6-groove belt, that we're gonna have a slipping issue and a whole bunch of other problems. And they said this is the biggest alternators that they could provide me with guaranteed performance. As in, like, I wasn't gonna be shredding belts, I wasn't gonna be tearing up idler pulleys, I wasn't gonna be tearing nothing up, that it would just run. So down here it says 400, over here it says 400. That, and they would probably like to use this video as on a how-to, a demonstration to their customers. Hey, instead of asking us how to install this, why don't you go watch this video? So I can't come out and go, oh yeah, we're gonna put the 800 amp cold, 500 amp hot alternator and I guarantee performance. It's not gonna happen. It won't work. I have to go to an 8-groove belt, and that's getting, I mean, you're talking about changing the crank and changing the power steering pump and everything on the front end of the motor to make that work. So we're going to stick with what we can just bolt on and we know that's going to work and they're going to give us good performance. So this is what came. I did buy the kit. I've got no cards in this game other than I purchased this for myself, and I thought I'd be kind and extend to them the thanks and say, hey, let's do a how-to video. And they were so helpful. They were incredibly helpful. So let's pop this box open, see what they sent us. There should be birth certificate stickers with both of these alternators where they've tested and certified them. And the real $64 million question is what's in here. Let's do alternator number 1. Now, I did have them send me a special harness for these alternators, and I'll explain that here after a while. But basically what's in here is the Steve Mead touch designed, otherwise he had a hand in making them a little bit more pretty, and I like it. I like it a lot. 400 amp alternator. I think they're beautiful, personally. They do provide 1/0 gauge lugs. Now, in today's video, we're just going to be installing the alternators, installing the brackets, and we're going to be hooking right back up to the factory electrical system. If you're interested in seeing what I end up doing with these alternators, that's going to be in another video. But what we're covering here today is simply the installation and assembly and then hooking back up to the factory charge system. Alternator number 2. Instructions for alternator number 2. I love how well everything that they produce is packed. I mean, there's like no BS involved. Very serious company. Okay. Now on the back of each alternator, there's going to be a birth certificate. Okay. This is telling us output 800 RPM idle, 221 amps, output at 1800 idle, or 1800 RPM cruise, 407. The date it was tested and who it was dated by. So we're going to see. Because you guys know me, I like to break things. I like to burn things. And I love to set things on fire. So, let's go see what's in the box. The bracket. There's a reason that a lot of guys have a hard time with dual alternators is trying to assemble the bracket system. The world that I come from, the radio world, it's not uncommon to have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 alternators underneath the hood of your truck. But the bracket is the hardest part to find. Well, since I'm building myself just a very basic ride-around truck, I want something that's going to be reliable, that I've got easily obtainable parts that are interchangeable with other easily obtainable parts. That is the reason I went this direction. This bracket is common, it's easily obtainable, they're a phone call away, and it's not a custom one-off build. First thing I got is a bag of hardware. I'm assuming these are my pulleys. And here are our front and back mounting plates. Let me get everything out and let's take a look at it. One belt and colored installation instruction pictures for people like me that need every little bit of help they can get. All right, let's get this organized. Okay, so this is our complete part list that we have. I have the D200 bracket and my parts list is complete. I'm not going to go over all the different parts because it may vary from plate to plate. Pardon me. From alternator install to alternator install. What I'm going to need for this is going to be a 17 millimeter socket, a 15 millimeter socket, a number 6 Allen, and then this is the part that most people aren't going to have just laying around their shop. You are going to need a pulley puller, okay? Because you are going to be taking the pulley off the front of the power steering pump. What you're doing is you're going to remove the stock power steering pump, bracket, and alternator assemblage off the side of your motor, and you're going to be replacing it with their aftermarket part, which will bolt up to all the stock holes in the stock location. But to make this work, the power steering pump goes through this opening up here in the eye, the front plate. This is your front plate, this is your back plate. They do provide you with medium thread locker Loctite. Some nylock bolts, a couple washers, a bunch of spacers. But this here, the little puller kit, is not something that you're going to have just sitting around. So, understand that you can go to Harbor Freight, you can go to AutoZone, all those kind of places, either rent a puller and an installer, by the way, and or just buy one for like 15 or 20 bucks. That is an extra piece of equipment that I know most people are not going to just have laying around their shop. Most. This is not a direct bolt up. It is some little bit of disassembly required, but it is a direct bolt on. Believe me, this system is way superior compared to the other things I've had to build, manufacture, and create to get multiple alternators underneath the hood of my vehicle. This is very straightforward and very simplistic. Well, we've got our parts list all laid out. We understand what we got to do. Let's go out to the vehicle and let's start taking parts off and putting parts on. Springtime, so please pardon the birds. And everybody's out working on their vehicles and getting them all cleaned up. First nice day of the year. We're gonna get nasty ones here coming up, so everybody's trying to get on it. So this is my standard Chevy Vortec motor, and we're gonna add another alternator right into this space here. So let's start from the very beginning. As always, when working with anything electrical on your vehicle, the very first thing you want to do is disconnect the battery. Being that everything in the universe is powered by 10 millimeter, we are going to undo our battery connection. On our American vehicle with our metric standard wrench of 10 millimeters. We're going to move this up and out of the way. And now our electrical system is isolated. Now, because we're going to be working up underneath here and changing out a bunch of stuff, take the engine cover off. And our very first step that we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the belt. The actual belt's got to go away. So underneath here is the tensioner, and we're going to rotate it this direction. The idler pulley tensioner, or pardon me, the tensioner pulley. We're going to rotate it this way, which is clockwise, which is going to take the tension off, and we're going to pull the belt off. Okay, so as we get this pulled out of here, do not throw this belt away. Fold it up, put this someplace in your vehicle safe. Throw this underneath a seat, something. I don't know about you, but I've learned over years that if you're going to add an aftermarket belt to your vehicle, as long as your stock locations are going to stay in play, as in your stock idler pulley, which is sitting here, and your stock alternator is going to stay in the same location, odds are that you can drop this belt on if you have a problem with this other belt. You and I both know you don't have a problem until you're out in the middle of literally the inside of a cow's asshole, dark in the middle of nowhere, and then you're going to tear the belt up. Well, you always want to be able to go back to your stock belt. So hold on to this, don't get rid of it. Okay, so our next step is we're going to disconnect our GM2 wire lead, which is here, which we're going to have to modify in the future here anyhow. Reach back in here again with our 10mm wrench. Very carefully, we're going to disconnect the positive lead off the alternator. Now when you lay this down, of course you want to make sure that where you put it, after you move this wire out of the way, that you're not going to put it on anything hot. Now, I haven't been driving the vehicle, it's nice and cooled off, but you have to be present. You have to be present in your mind with that if you're going to change this out and the vehicle is going to be warm, which would be silly to do, that you want to make sure that you're mindful of where you lay this for heat. Move that up out of the way. We're going to move that up out of the way. Let's go ahead and we'll reinstall our nut so we don't lose it. On to the next step. Now with our 15mm socket, let's go ahead and we're going to pop out the stock alternator and get it out of the way for the moment. Then we've got to go down and we're going to work on the power steering pump and pulley. I ahead and saved you all the expletives and, you know, the normal language that goes on when man has to go pull pulley off the front end of motor. So the power steering pump is now, pulley has been removed. That was no big deal. And now we're going to take our 15mm socket and we're going to run around and we're going to crack all of these, which I'm not going to lie, I've kind of already done. And I apologize for the angle and also apologize for the lighting. It's an incredibly nice, beautiful, bright day out here, and I'm sorry I don't want to be up inside the shop. So, crack all of our nuts, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to back all of these out, and we're going to remove this stock bracket right here. Okay, power steering pump should stay in place. We should be able to pull the old, what I'd consider to be an accessory bracket, off. So now let's go prep our new plate. Okay, so this is our front plate. We're going to put a bolt through here. These are bolts number AB. And they are tight, which is good because it's going to make this easier for assembly. Okay, then you get your 5 bolts installed, or 4 bolts installed, and these are your AB bolts. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab the D spacers. These guys, D, part number D. We're going to slide those on here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now on the bottom, we're going to use spacer number F, or letter F. Drop that on. Okay. Now our plate sits like so. It's our backer plate. It sits down just like that. And this is the way it's going to bolt to the front end of the motor. No shit. It's going to drop straight on. Now, what it says to do in the instruction booklet is for us to add spacers A on the back side of this, just like so. And now you'll notice that this pin and these 3 are all now in a line. This is how it's going to go straight on the motor. So let's get rid of all of these because we don't need them anymore. Now, in the instructions, it says that you're supposed to add a little bit of this provided Loctite here, 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 and here. This is medium grade. These bolts are long. We all know the best way to get Loctite to break free is heat. So thank God this will be all open, so if you needed to hit a torch to this in the future to break these, you can. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to start these. Just start them, barely start them. And then we're going to apply our thread locker, that way it all gets sucked into the mounting holes. Cover this in here instead of out there when we get the plate installed. This is where your power steering pump sits. You're going to need to put spacers B right here on this spot, another spacer B here, and spacer C goes on the backside standing off by itself. Okay, it's going to be really hard to shoot that, but it's going to be a little bit of fun to get these worked up in there, but we'll figure it out. Have faith. We'll get her slid in there. So just to know that, and then you're going to use bolts BC for this one on what would be the driver's side of the truck, and then on the passenger side of the mount bracket opposite side, you're going to use bolts BB. Okay? So now we're going to use bolts B and spacers BB. Now, please note, this bracket is still on here fairly loose, and that's so we can move everything around and hopefully get these to line up. So this pulley needs to come, or the thing needs to come up and over. It's going to put me in an odd angle, like really odd angle. Well, no, I don't want to bend that line. I think I'm going to have to undo the bracket on the back side of the power steering pump and let the pump hang free for a second. That was a lot of fun. I'm here to tell you what. No, it wasn't. Okay, so you are going to need the pulleyers now. Okay, the pulleys. We're going to need the G spacers, the BF washers, the BD bolts, and 2 of the BG nylocks. Assuming these are going to be for the alternators when we get that far. So this goes through the front side of the plate. No, this goes through washer, bolt, plate, nylock, washer, pulley, through the plate, nylock. Let's go put this on. Okay. Once again, we're going to utilize our good friend the 17mm socket and the 17mm wrench. Having fun yet, children? I'm telling you, I am. Woo! And then our next step is to put the power steering pump pulley back on. Which, let me just explain how excited I am for that. Yeah. Oh well. In theory, it's supposed to go on easier and it comes off, right? Measuring this 9 ways from Sunday. This surface, this, and these grooves are spot on with each other. If I take a ruler and I put a ruler on the front edge to write down and a ruler on the front edge of the back down, it's dead on the money. And if I need to pull it out a little bit or push it in, that's not a big deal. But I feel comfortable enough now for us to move on. So let's finally, let's get around to where we can mount up our 2 alternators. This is what I've been waiting for this whole time. I don't care who you are, that thing is sexy. For the most part, this bolted just right up. There's a couple little critiques, but I really got nothing to say. This straight up and on. So the only thing I got left to do is hook up because this was a GM2 wire, which I'm going to modify heavily away from that. I'm going to go to the 4-wire setup, is to tie the GM2 wire, which I need to put an ignition, that ignition source I need to tie into the blue wire for this plug, and then the white wire needs to go to the alternator sense lead. So let me quickly get that fabbed up, which means I got to remove the shroud again and pull the plug out of there. I was just taking pictures of it, and man, I don't care who you are, that is beautiful. I just love this belted look on the front. But we'll see how it does in testing. And once again, we're only going to use this alternator for today. I've got to get a custom bar built, custom copper bar that goes between the 2 alternators on the back on the positive posts, which you'll see how that comes to play in another video. But as far as the installation portion of this is concerned, that is it, step by step. This is a nice kit. Compared to some of the stuff I've had to go through in the past to make multiple alternators work, out of the box, direct drop-in, this is pretty impressive. I mean, some of the tolerances on this bracket are so stupid tight, but when you pay for the amount of money that you're going to pay for this thing, I would expect nothing less. So, all right, now let me go through, now that I got tension on everything, let me make sure I got all the nuts tight, and let's hook up the charge lead. Okay, so let's give this a little quick test. It's either going to chunk a belt or it's going to work perfect. See if we got charge indicator light or anything on the dash. Wants me to buckle up my seatbelt, that's it. It should be charging if the harness is set up properly to about 15.1 and some change. 15.14. And dropping. Good. Oh, perfect. Couldn't be happier. All right, so now to run the 500 MCM ground wire and the 750 MCM power wire. Or maybe I'll just do a single run of 500 MCM. Probably gonna do a single run of 500 MCM, but belt's coming right off this alternator straight down, coming off the other pulley straight up. And I couldn't be happier. Okay, a couple little last tips and then we're going to wrap this up. The system works great. I built a new bar to go from here to here and then take off to my 500 MCM wire that I'm going to install. I wanted to talk about the harness, this thing. You'll notice that there is this 4-port plug and then its married partner. Well, the plug plugs directly in here to the top, but this blue wire attaches to a switch 12-volt source, okay? Now, that's great, the alternator is going to work, but you're going to have a charge indicator light on your dash. And at least for this model of vehicle, which is a 2010 through 2014 Chevy Suburban, you'll find that when you go and you pull back the wire loom on the stock 2-plug harness that comes with the vehicle that's attached for the stock alternator, you'll find that you have a brown wire and you have a white wire, okay? And if you take and you hook up your voltmeter to the leads, so I just went ahead and I clipped the plug off and I stripped the wires back a little bit, and I took and I hooked up my voltmeter to ground and I measured it. The brown wire had 5.3 volts on it and the white wire had nothing. Okay, so my whole goal was to get it so that the charge lead, or the charge light on the dash would shut off and it would run as stock. And the computer would be happy and it wouldn't be sending a signal all the time. So you've only got 4 choices of leads here, right? And 2 wires, so that only gives you, what, a possible 6 combinations. But with a little bit of messing with it, of course the blue wire is going to be your field wire, which is going to be the trigger for the alternator. Then you're going to have 3 leads now. We already know what this blue lead is, so now we're going to have 3 leads. We're going to have green, yellow, and white. Okay, well also in certain models the yellow wire is going to be your trigger. So we're going to ignore that. So now we're down to 2 leads. Now we only have 2 options. White to white, or brown to white, and green to brown, and green to white. So what the computer actually wants to see is on the green wire, hold on a second, let me look at my notes. I want to make sure I get this perfect for you guys. So I attached the brown to the white lead, and all of a sudden I got a 2.9 volt signal that came out of the green lead. So I attached the white lead to it, had 0 signal. Boop, shut off the dash charge light. You can jumper the brown and white together and have it touched to the switch source. That'll temporarily fool the computer into thinking that you have overridden, or that the alternator is okay. What it's really looking for is a low voltage signal source to pass through the alternator itself. So it's sending that 5-volt lead, and you cannot use that 5.3 volt lead as your trigger source. Just keep that in mind. Has to be a 12-volt solid signal. Comes in on the blue line. Okay? So brown goes to white, and your white wire goes to green. And what you'll see is a 5.3 volt lead signal go in on the white wire, and a 2.9 volt signal will come out of the green wire, and that will tell the computer, hey, voltage going in, alternator doing job, and it's spitting voltage out the other end. And that is enough to make the computer go, I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy, happy. No charge light. This is a relatively easy kit to install on this newer model Suburban. I would have hated to do this on a later model vehicle just because of the proximity of the fan. This has got electric fans on it, so therefore there's all this extra room in here, and that made it really, really quite nice. I wish the holes for the power steering pump would have had a little bit more slop to them, but hey, just took a little bit of extra effort to maneuver everything to where it needed to be. That's it. I'm very happy with how this turned out. The only other thing I had to do is reattach my pulley puller for the power steering pump, and I had to push that in a little bit. Once I went and ran it for a few minutes, I noticed that the power steering pump pulley itself was a little bit too far forward still, so I pushed it back in. Now it's all perfectly in line, and that's it, we're done. I'm going to do a little bit of wire cleanup today, and I'm going to start tying in this other alternator, which I'm going to have switched on and off. When I bring my heavy amp load on, I'll spin that one on. That'll help save me a little bit in gas mileage, but other than that, that's how you do the install video for this. Now, uncertain. I think 2009 till present. There is a committed ground lead that is down here, and it's actually got an amperage field effect sensor that sits on it. So if you do upgrade your grounds, which I'm going to do anyhow, and I'm going to ignore that sensor, but if you do upgrade your ground, you'll find that on certain computer models in the Chevy pipeline, that it measuring the amp current that's coming directly off the motor, there's one primary ground. Well, I can see one off the back of the truck over here and another one over here, so I don't think I'm going to have that computer sensor, but you're going to want to keep that in mind when it comes to trying to get the charge light to make sure it shuts off. So you'll have to identify that on your own. Just saying, that's another thing that you might want to look at. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a 5.3 volt lead that comes off the stock harness and a return signal lead that you need to apply 2.9 volts to. And the alternator does all of that for you. White wire, you apply your 5 volt lead, 5.3 volts to. The green wire is the return that goes back to the computer and says everything's good. So just keep that in mind. That's it, gentlemen. I appreciate every single one of you, and I thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this knowledge will help somebody out there be able to have a little bit smoother install with their dual alternator setup, and hopefully it'll be able to help them understand how to go about wiring their regulator setup. So we'll see you. I appreciate every single one of you. Bye.